Oh, yes, I have a very special guest, Ashley McGuire, the journalist and activist and thinker who writes about a subject very near and dear to my heart, the abolition of male and female. She has the latest PragerU video, and it is titled Gender Identity, Why All the Confusion. She wrote a book, Sex Scandal, The Drive to Abolish Male and Female. I had her on when she did it. The video, again, is Gender Identity, Why All the Confusion. Hi, Ashley.
Hey, it's great to be back with you again.
Is it true you've become a mother since we last spoke?
Well, I became a mother for the third time. I have 3 kids now.
That's a good point. All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I am a big fan of big families. So it's this issue of quote-unquote gender confusion. You raised an issue that I then publicized on the radio when I saw your script. It is amazing that it did not receive more publicity, that in a mixed martial arts fight, a man who said he was a woman was allowed to fight as a woman and beat the strongest woman in that weight class to a pulp. I mean, she was hospitalized. Is that correct?
Right. And, this is one example, and people might say, okay, well, this is mixed martial arts, but this is one of many examples that we're seeing regularly now of biological men who say they are women competing against women in their sport. This is obviously an extreme example because he hospitalized this woman, but we're starting to read all the time, about men winning a women's bike race. I just saw this, or competing against women in their own sports, and it's it raises serious questions about what's going to happen to women's sports if really we're making them unisex based on self-identification.
I actually hope it happens more and more. So that the wimps who run sports organizations and the wimps who run universities, the cowards, will have to confront the consequences of the imbecility that a physical, biological male is the same as a biological female.
I was stunned when I was doing the research for my book at how long this has been going on. It's actually been about 10 years now that even at the high school level, there are cases where these aren't even boys who self-identify as girls. These are just biological boys playing on girls' teams. I give the example of a biological boy who swims in the girls' meet, and he not only wins and goes on to the state level competition, so that's a spot taken away from a girl who might be able to get a scholarship or recognition or an edge with a university, but he broke the meet time. And what's so insane is he did it with a time that wouldn't have even qualified him for the boys' division. So this is something that's going on, and what's so crazy
Wait, I don't understand. If he doesn't identify as a woman, why is he allowed to compete?
Because I think his school either didn't offer swimming for guys. I'm not entirely sure why it is that he.
I see, but because maybe just because you can't discriminate on the basis of gender.
That's exactly what the court said. They said
right.
They've changed the laws from saying you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. These were laws that were designed to protect women from being discriminated against.
Yes, exactly.
So you literally cannot make a distinction between the sexes.
All right, hold on there. Ashley McGuire is my guest. She has the latest PragerU video on this very subject. I am proud to recommend that you do indeed go to PragerforHillsdale.com. Have you ever thought of Hillsdale College in terms of impacting K-12 education? Well, they are, and they're improving young lives in the process. Hillsdale has founded more than a dozen charter schools nationwide, with more opening every year. They provide curricula, train their faculty, offer support and advice. And get this, Hillsdale doesn't take a penny for these services. They do it for free. It's called the Barney Charter School Initiative, and it's funded entirely by donors. Anyway, learn more about Hillsdale at pragerforhillsdale.com. You can enroll in courses, get things. Everything is for free. All they really want is to be in touch with you. And we got to fight. That's what I always say. pragerforhillsdale.com. Back to Ashley McGuire, who gives the latest Prager University video. Gender identity, why all the confusion? I did not know this now, that there are boys. I knew that there are biological males playing on female teams or against females individually, and because they say they're women. But you're telling me that we even now allow it even when they know that they're men, but they just want to play on the women's team. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think I have a statistic in my book that I think it's in Pennsylvania. I talk a lot about some of these cases in Pennsylvania. They did a study and found something like 30% of schools had at least one biological boy. Again, these are biological boys who self-identify as biological boys competing with girls.
30% of the what? Of the schools?
I believe so, yeah.
It's
an
mind-blowing.
Extraordinarily high number. And
so let me ask you another question. You're familiar with the teachers who have been told not to refer to their elementary school classes as boys and girls?
Yeah, I remember reading about that. I believe it was in North Carolina.
Yes, it was. It was in fact. Yeah. Do you know if that's spreading across the country? Are you familiar with it at all?
Well, I mean, I think it is in various forms. I mean, here, I live in Washington, D.C., and there was a huge uproar in Fairfax County when the school came out with new, essentially a new curriculum for sex ed for kids. So this was something slightly different. But, I mean, they were proposing teaching kids, kindergarten, first, second grade, things like gender as a fluid spectrum, things like that. And what they tried to do that was so sneaky is they tried to have it put into the classes that are mandatory, not the sex ed classes that parents can opt their kids out of, but the portion of health where they talk about these things. And, I mean, I actually went and watched some of the videos of the school board hearings, and parents were up in arms. And I think this is happening all across the country where it's not just public schools. I mean, in many cases, the private schools, the secular
There's
schools
no difference. There is absolutely no difference. It's right. I always make that point, but go on.
Well, and you know what, I'll tell you that I know somebody who's got their child at a brand new middle school in Boulder County, Colorado, and they have unisex bathrooms. The bathrooms are unisex. These are middle schoolers.
Wait a minute. The bathrooms are and we're not talking single-user bathroom.
Nope.
You're kidding.
No. So I think this stuff is spreading all throughout our schools, all around the country.
There are bathrooms for mixed genders?
Absolutely. I'll keep the name of the person private because they're concerned about their own family's privacy as they are trying to fight the school on this. But school kids showed up for the first day of school and found that the bathrooms were unisex.
I'm silent because I'm processing it. I can't believe it. And I mean.
But I'll tell you. I mean, I went to college 10 years ago, and the bathrooms were already unisex.
Yeah, so that's true. College, yeah. So why not? You're right. Why not high school? You're right.
I think that colleges, if you want to see where this issue is going, colleges and universities are about 10 years ahead of us.
That's correct.
And they're now handing out. I mean, these are elite schools, too. They're handing out vocabulary guidelines.
That's right.
Absurd pronouns that aren't even grammatically correct.
Right.
Telling people, I mean, you got professors being fired because they refuse to violate the grammar laws of the English language. So that's what's slowly trickling down into our high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools.
Wow. Well, that's why this video and your book are so important. The video is up this week, and we can see it next week, see it forever. Unless, of course, YouTube decides to restrict it. You know, they've restricted 30 of our videos already out of the 240 for sex and violence. They even restricted my video on
mine involves both.
Yeah, and that's right. You're right. Yes, exactly. You described the MMA, the mixed martial arts fight.
Sex and violence.
Well, anyway, listen, congratulations on a job well done. We are obviously fighting a very important, I think it's the most important, frankly. I think the abolition of male and female is 100% a guarantor of the collapse of our civilization. Everything else is somehow manageable, but I don't think that will be. Ashley McGuire, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's what I do believe, folks, and it's totally under the radar. They're teaching. Did you hear what they try to do there in Washington? Under the radar. Start teaching elementary school students about gender fluidity. You know what gender fluidity means? It means that, hey, don't think there are boys and girls or men and women. It's a spectrum. You can feel anything you want, anytime you want. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. All righty, everybody. Dennis Prager here. Carl in Oceanside, California. Hi, Dennis.
Good morning, Mr. Prager. Pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
I grew up with you, by the way, so...
Oh, that's nice.
I just wanted to comment. The other caller was talking about the unisex bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I recently graduated from the University of California at Santa Cruz, and the unisex bathrooms are functionally women's bathrooms they allow the men to go into.
Uh-huh. So there were no urinals, obviously.
No urinals, just a bunch of... I only went into the unisex bathroom one time while I was there, and it's like 5 stalls, and all of them on the insides have these tampon dispensers, etc. Things I would think one would find in a women's bathroom.
Yes, I you know, that's a leap. That you would find a tampon dispenser only in a women's bathroom. That's a drop sexist of you. But nevertheless, that comports with reality as I understand it as well. So is that now universal at the University of California, Santa Cruz?
Pretty much. I lived in the dorms my first year as well as this past summer, and the bathrooms for the dorms are unisex as well.
Is the shower area as well?
Yes, there's no distinction between the male showers and the female showers.
How did the females feel about this, or are they too intimidated to say?
I never asked them because I observed that most of them were on the left, but I always had to wonder why they would let us shower next to the women if we're all rapists.
Well, that's a good point. Well, my big question is, why would any parent allow their daughter to go to a place where she has a 1 in 5 chance of being raped? It just shows they don't believe their own lies, but it doesn't matter. How did you? Just let me ask you this: how did you survive Santa Cruz? Were you? No. I know you're laughing, and and I'm glad you are.
It's a good question, Mr. Prager. The second to last quarter I was at Santa Cruz, there was an alumni who actually taught an independent study course on Austrian economics, so that helped.
Well, listen, I am gratified you exist. Thank you so much. Sorry so much I couldn't take all your calls. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.
It's now okay for a man to hit a woman. That, in effect, is what a mixed martial arts league decided when it allowed Fallon Fox, a biological male, to fight as a woman simply because he identifies as one. And the consequence of this decision? Fox sent female fighter Tamika Brents to the hospital with a broken skull and a concussion. Brents needed 7 surgical staples to bind her wounds. the battered woman, a trained fighter herself, said of her match with Fox, "I've never felt so overpowered in my life." 20 years ago, if a man hit a woman so hard that he sent her to the hospital, he'd be in prison. Now, he can get paid for it. Today we are told that male and female are one and the same. This denial of male-female differences has led to the astonishing belief that men and women are not born male or female. They are whatever gender they say they are. Facebook went so far as to offer its users over 50 genders to choose from. Know what a demi-boy is? Me neither. The idea that gender identification is now a personal choice might sound enlightened to some, but it's actually a very anti-scientific view of one of the essential facts of life. Men and women are inherently different. Their brains are different, their hormones are different, their chromosomes are different, and of course, their bodies are different. No amount of peer-reviewed papers from gender studies departments can change this. But that won't stop the progressive elites who run our universities, news media, many of our biggest companies, and even our high schools and elementary schools from trying. For their efforts, women will pay an especially high price. That's because the men and women are the same argument invariably leads women to be judged against a male standard. Or to put it another way, to be more of a woman has to be more like a man. She has to want to have casual sex like a man, to serve in combat like a man, to pursue a career with single-minded intensity like a man. Of course, there are exceptions, but the overwhelming majority of women aren't seeking casual sex, don't have the physical strength of men, and don't share the same work-life priorities as men. Ironically, this quest for sameness is occurring at a time when science is telling us more emphatically than ever that we are different. So what your grandmother took for granted, men and women are different, science now confirms. But there is no room for science in, say, stores like Target or Toys R Us, where toys are no longer divided into the boys section and the girls section, or in a North Carolina school district where students can no longer be called boys and girls, but only students, or in college dorms where co-ed bathrooms and even co-ed bedrooms are increasingly common. For the tiny percentage of people who experience gender dysphoria, we should have nothing but compassion. We should do everything we can to help them and protect their dignity. But we don't need to overturn biologically defined sex differences to do so. But that's what's happening. Using the wrong pronoun at the office might get you fired. In Canada, it might land you in court. In mixed martial arts, as we have seen, it can lead to getting your head bashed in. Apparently, this is a small price to pay in a world where we must all genuflect to political correctness. Even after being hospitalized, Tamika Brents knew she had to toe the PC line. When asked how she explained why she lost so badly to a man who said he was a woman, she said, "I can't answer whether it's because she was born a man or not, because I'm not a doctor." Vice magazine, writing about the incident, had no sympathy for Brents. Why should they? As they wrote, biological sex isn't black and white. But in virtually every instance, it is. The longer we allow the obvious to go unstated and undefended, the worse it will be, for boys and girls, and for men and women, but especially for women. The sexes are different. Rather than trying to quash this reality, which can only lead to more needless confusion and suffering, not less, we should step back and marvel at it, and enjoy it. Male-female differences are among the most wonderful things in life. I'm Ashley McGuire for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To help keep these videos free, please consider making a donation.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and thank you for being with me. University of Nevada, Las Vegas professor blames Las Vegas massacre on Trump. Campus reform headline. In a video obtained by Campus Reform, UNLV assistant professor Tess Winkleman is seen addressing her History 407 class. Referring to Trump, Winkleman noted that when he got elected, I told my classes 3 semesters ago, some of us won't be affected by this presidency, but others are going to die. Other people will die because of this. I don't know whether these events would have inevitably happened, whether or not he got elected, but he has the same rhetorical powers every president has to encourage or discourage. So far, all he has done is to encourage violence. Really? See, she lives, it's amazing. I guess, well, if you just read the left-wing press, that's what you believe. That is what has been the great lie, one of the great lies of our time, when the violence has almost all come from the left. I don't even want to talk to you about North Korea because I'm getting worried. It's a very serious situation, my friends, and people want to tune it out, and I totally understand that. Nicholas Kristof, who's a naive man, but he's a columnist in the New York Times, and I read him periodically, has a very long piece that I read every word of. In this weekend's New York Times, he's in North Korea. And some of it is very interesting and very, very worrisome. Listen, he spoke to officials in North Korea about Otto Warmbier. Remember Otto Warmbier, the poor student? He took a poster, he took a propaganda poster, and he was sentenced to, 15 years of torture, which is what it is. It's not prison, it's torture. For taking a poster, a propaganda poster. He broke the law in our country, said Ri Young-pil, a senior foreign ministry official, adding that Warmbier was returned a week before his death as a humanitarian act. Another senior ministry official, Cho Kang-il, insisted that North Korea had provided excellent care and spent all the money for nursing him, unquote. Something in me snapped, writes Kristof. I asked how North Koreans could possibly boast about their spending on a young man when he was in a coma only because of them. Cho replied just as hotly that Warmbier had not been mistreated and was in fine condition when he was sent back home. The U.S. administration or some people with a certain intention let him die. Cho said, this must be intended to foster and spread anti-communist hatred within America. Do you hear this? Did you get what I just read to you? North Korean officials told this New York Times reporter that they had returned Warmbier in perfect health, and American officials killed him. Now do you understand what it is like to live 24/7 in North Korea, where the opposite of reality is told to you always as reality? There has been no place like this in the history of the world. I am a student of totalitarianism. He's got Stalin and Mao beat. North Korea is the most pathologic place on earth. They said with a straight face they returned Warmbier healthy, and American officials killed him to promote anti-communist hatred. Then he goes on about the military issue. This military mobilization is accompanied by the ubiquitous assumption that North Korea could not only survive a nuclear conflict but also win it. If we have to go to war, we won't hesitate to totally destroy the United States, explained Mun Hyuk Myung, a 38-year-old teacher visiting an amusement park. Ryang Sung Chol, a 41-year-old factory worker, looked surprised when I asked if his country could survive a war with America. We would certainly win, he said. I think people believe that. I, Dennis, think that. Hardliners seem to have gained greater power this year, especially after Trump's threat to totally destroy North Korea. The security forces refused my request to meet 3 Americans whom they still detain, one for 2 years now. And then he writes, this is where I differ with him. A basic problem is that hardliners seem ascendant in both Washington and Pyongyang. That's right. But I would ask Mr. Kristof one question. The softliners who preceded Mr. Trump, did they succeed? If I could ask Nicholas Kristof one question. Since President Trump is a hardliner and he's worried about war, so what did the softliners achieve other than a nuclear bellicose North Korea? That's the problem. Then he writes, triplets are taken from their parents and raised by the state because they're considered auspicious. Isn't that amazing? If God forbid you give birth to triplets, they take them away because triplets are considered auspicious. The personality cult is unyielding, with every adult wearing pins of the great leader Kim Il-sung, who died in 1994, or his son, the dear leader, Kim Jong-il, who died in 2011. Their portraits are in every home, every factory, every classroom. And now this is the line of the article. Are you ready? Every year people die trying to rescue Kim portraits from house fires. I'm quiet to let that sink in. If their people's house, if they even have a house or apartment, is on fire, they run back in to rescue portraits of either Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, or Kim Jong-un.
It's a travesty of a mockery of a sham, of a mockery of a travesty of two mockeries of a sham.
It's worse than that. And he doesn't know whether it's genuine loyalty or to win credit with the authorities. We don't know anything about the minds of North Koreans, although I think they believe, the older ones especially, believe everything. But I think that there's another factor, is fear. You allowed a portrait of one of the Kims to be burned? Well, we'll burn you. A portrait of any of the Kims is more valuable than a human being in North Korea. What makes this moment so perilous, writes Kristof, is that North Koreans are steeped in the idea that they have repeatedly defeated the United States and can do so again. Every single person we spoke to, from officials to students, voiced certainty that if war breaks out, America will end up in ashes and the Kim regime will emerge victorious. That is, I believe that, and I believe they believe it, and that is, my friends, worrisome. That's what they think. This is his suggestion. First, Trump should stop personalizing and escalating the conflict. Second, we need talks without conditions, if only talks about talks. I'd suggest a secret visit to Pyongyang by a senior administration official, as well as discussions with North Korea's ambassador to the United Nations. Third, human rights have to be part of the agenda, backed by the threat of suspending North Korea's credentials at the United Nations. Fourth, we should support organizations that smuggle information on USB drives into North Korea. This would be cheap and might contribute to change in the long term. Fifth, increase cyber warfare, which the U.S. has already used effectively against North Korea. Sixth, let's enforce tighter sanctions, but only if harnessed to a plausible outcome. What plausible outcome does he want? That's the question. So, I'll tell you one of the suggestions he has. I tell you this, I do agree with. We have to get people, we have to smuggle in on little USB drives truth about North Korea. Our real hope really lies within North Korea and within Iran in having enough people understand the evil that runs their societies. But my friends, I can't deny it. I'm worried because war with North Korea, I don't believe the United States mainland would be affected. But I worry about millions of South Koreans and Japanese. All right, you're listening to the Dennis Prager Show, and we continue. All right, let's talk about education for a minute. Did you know that more than 15 states have begun requiring high school students to pass a basic citizenship test in order to graduate? It's sad that such a test is even necessary. That's why, besides their free online courses and in Primus, Hillsdale College is making an impact on K-12 education. Hillsdale helps found and provides ongoing support and guidance to classical K-12 charter schools nationwide. It's called the Barney Charter School Initiative. It's revolutionizing K-12 education. You can learn more at pragerforhillsdale.com. Watch the brief, powerful video about this exciting work of Hillsdale. Because it helps for you to know it. It helps the show. It helps Hillsdale. It helps America. pragerforhillsdale.com. It's all free. A guest that I've had a number of times in my radio career, for whom I have great respect, is John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. His most recent book is 2016. His most recent book from 2016 is The War on Guns, and it's published by Regnery. John Lott, welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show.
Oh, great to talk to you again, Dennis. As you know, I've been listening to you since I was in college, so it's great to talk to you.
Well, that's very kind. But I think we're having a drop of a breakup in. Are you talking into your phone? Is there a bad connection?
Well, I can try to make sure my mouth is closer to the phone. I'm sorry if it wasn't close enough.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So John Lott knows as much about guns as anybody in the United States. So let's first talk about what is this bump stock? Is that the thing? I never heard of it in my life. I don't think 99% of Americans did. I assume you did.
Yeah, I've seen them operate in the past. But, the way a machine gun works is that you pull the trigger once and bullets come out as long as you keep the trigger depressed. Semi-automatic, one pull of the trigger, one bullet comes out, it reloads. What the bump stock does is it keeps your fingers in one place, but it rocks your gun back and forth. And that moving back and forth allows the trigger to be pulled very quickly. And it's not very accurately.
All right, hold on, John. Listen, I want to hear every word that you have to say, but we're really having a bad connection. So why don't we call John back, okay? And then we'll get him. So anyway, he was explaining I think, not obviously, I assume most of you know. So a machine gun, that's fully automatic gun. You press the trigger once, it keeps shooting. Right? Like a comic book, you've seen it. Okay. And I've seen it, of course, in movies. Then there is the semi-automatic where you press each time and it loads another bullet. But you have to press each time for the bullet to be expelled. Now, with this, apparently with this bump stock, is that what it's called? Bump stock? Yeah. It enables you, as he put it, in a rocking motion, I guess, it sort of mimics a fully automatic gun. I think I got that right. All right, John, let's pray. How you doing now?
Okay, I hope this comes.
Yeah, it's much better. Yeah. Okay. So what?
Anyway.
So what is the difference, not in theory, but in effect, between a fully automatic and a bump stock on a semi-automatic?
Well, in practice, there's not a huge difference in terms of the rate of fire.
Wow. Well, that's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. The big difference is that since the gun is bouncing back and forth against you, it's pretty hard to aim accurately. And, the people have problems anyway aiming machine guns when it's firing a lot of bullets just because the recoil. I mean, if anybody's fired a gun, kind of the recoil you get just from firing one shot. Well, just imagine if you have shot after shot after shot, the recoil, it's hard for people to aim a machine gun anyway, but with the gun rocking back and forth on your shoulder the way it does with the bump stock, it makes it really hard to.
Okay, were you aware of bump stocks before Las Vegas?
Yeah, and it's one thing I've been afraid would be used in something like this, and I've made comments about this. Look, I have no problem with banning this type of device that can be added onto the gun. My one point I would raise is people find ways around these types of things. This guy obviously had a fair amount of technical chops. He had wired his car apparently with ammonium nitrate for a bomb. He had made a number of homemade bombs. I'll give you a simple example with regard to guns. We're always talking about limits on magazine sizes. Some people, New York wanted to limit it to 7, California limits it to 10. The thing is, a magazine is a box with a spring in it. I've seen people put together magazines in like less than 2 minutes. And so when you pass these types of laws, what ends up happening is the law-abiding good citizens say, well, I'm not allowed to own this, I won't own it. But you don't really stop criminals from being able to go and get it. So my only thing would just be, if you feel better banning this, go ahead and ban it. It's just don't expect miracles in terms of stopping people. This bump stock device was actually approved during the Obama administration because it didn't meet the technical definition of a machine gun where one pulled the trigger as long as it was depressed, bullets would come out. They actually said since you had to have the trigger pulled each independent time for a bullet to come out, it wasn't classified as a machine gun by them.
But wait, I thought you explained to me that you didn't have to press your finger each time.
No, for a machine gun you do, but for the bump stock, the way it works is that it bounces off your shoulder. You keep your finger in one place.
Right.
And as the gun bounces.
Right. So I'm not okay.
Forth,
right. So I don't understand, why was it approved? Why isn't it considered a machine gun and therefore banned? Why was it approved at all?
Well, because technically a machine gun is, as you keep the trigger depressed, you don't have to move the trigger. Once you pull the trigger in, bullets will keep on coming out as long as the trigger is depressed. With semi-automatic, you have to pull.
No, I know that's true for a semi, but what about with the bump stock? I thought you said it was essentially the same as a machine gun.
In terms of the rapidity of fire, but you still have to have the trigger depressed each time. It's just that the trigger gets depressed very quickly as the gun is bouncing back and forth on your shoulder.
Okay, all right. I have a lot more. If you have questions for John Lott, 1-8-PRAGER-776. All right, everybody. Let's take some calls here because the guns are in the news again. I have John Lott on, expert on guns, Crime Prevention Research Center president. Most recent book is The War on Guns. And everybody's talking about bump stock, which most of us never heard of before, but it essentially, if John Lott has it right, and he usually does, it just simply sort of, I'm using, this is my term, mimics a machine gun in that whatever the mechanism, it is simply allows one to shoot many bullets at one time. If he did not have bump stock, I know this is not fully answerable. Let's say he did not. Let's say he had the guns that he had. Would there have been considerably fewer deaths and injuries?
Yeah, it depends. So the thing is, obviously, he was able to fire bullets more rapidly, but they were relatively small caliber bullets. There were essentially 223. They're a little bit wider than the 22 caliber. So it's like if he had used, let's say, a deer hunting rifle, which would have 30 caliber bullets, which basically means 0.3 of an inch wide as opposed to, about 0.2 of an inch wide, he may have killed more people just because the bullet would have gone through more people if they're crowded, or would have done more damage to each person. One of the reasons why the military uses the smaller caliber bullet is that in war you want to wound the other soldiers as opposed to kill them. And the reason why you want to do that is that for each person on the other side you wound, you slow down 7 or 8 people that have to take care of that individual that's there, and it makes troops not being able to move as quickly. But the problem is, if he were to, let's say, have a large caliber machine gun, those are really hard to aim. If you have a 30 caliber machine gun, you have to have it anchored down someplace.
Right, but when you're shooting at thousands of people in an open area, you don't need to aim.
No, I agree, but I think my guess is, what I'm saying is, if he had a 30 caliber gun, the people that he hit would have been more likely to die.
Right, I understand. I do understand. Let me take some calls. Not everybody agrees with you, which I know you're totally used to. Let's go. Okay, Dave in Chicago, Dennis Prager, and John Lott. Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking the call. Listen, I just want to clarify what the gentleman said. But you don't need a bump stock to bump fire. It makes it easier, but you don't need one. You can go to YouTube. You can. Well, a lot of people have not mentioned this, and it gives a false impression that you need this device. I've seen people bump fire semi-automatic handguns along with semi-automatic rifles by just using their hands with the handgun or with their belt loop using a semi-automatic rifle. So banning the bump stock in and of itself will not correct the problem of people using it.
Right. Well, I think he said that. I think you said people's ingenuity will figure out other ways.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I wasn't going to go through the whole list of other ways that they can go and do that. But the bottom line is, if people want to ban the bump stock, fine, if it makes them feel better. But what I tried to emphasize before is what this gentleman is saying, and that is, don't expect a lot from it. You know, it's not going to change, really, people's ability to go and do whatever they were going to be doing.
I want to read to you from an interview on CNN yesterday, interviewing a Commander Mark Kelly, who said, and I'm reading verbatim from CNN, let's see, 33,000 Americans dying every single year from gun violence. It is completely unacceptable, and we're a country of laws, and the laws matter. And we do know that in states that have stronger gun laws, we have less people that die from gun violence. Is that correct?
No, I don't think so.
Well, wait. So, wait. Did he just make that up? I mean, this is amazing to me that people say either you or he is wrong. Right,
I understand. Well, just so you know where he's coming from, Mark Kelly is Gabby Gifford's husband, Congresswoman who was shot.
Oh, I did not know that.
And they've set up their own gun control organization, American Solutions, there. So just know where he's coming from a little bit. He's not a police commander or something, if that's what you were thinking. But, look, when they talk about gun violence, they do a lot of different things. Like they'll add in suicides with guns. It turns out that suicides with guns are very prevalent in, like, western states where gun ownership is high and rural areas. And the reason for that is that you have a real imbalance in terms of gender when you're looking at older people. When you have a farm and the wife dies, the guy stays on the farm.
All right, hold on there. This is very important, the suicide statistic. We'll be back in a minute. Got to take a break here. I'm Dennis Prager with John Lott talking about guns. So the husband of Gabby Giffords, the congresswoman who was seriously injured in that attack in Tucson a number of years ago, went on CNN yesterday, and I read to you. We do know that in states that have stronger gun laws, we have less people that die from gun violence. And John Lott, so I'm asking that question to John Lott, because if it's true, it would make it clear, presumably, that more gun laws means less gun violence, and everybody wants less gun violence. But then you pointed out, and I realized this only last week, that what do you know offhand, what percentage of gun deaths in America are suicides?
It's about 70%.
Right. Yes, that's what I read. 2/3. I read 2/3 to my audience. And I was blown away because it's so completely dishonest to include that in the gun violence statistics.
Right. Well, I agree. The problem that you have when you're looking at this is there's things that differ across areas in terms of why people commit suicide. In rural areas, older men tend to commit suicide at relatively high rates because, in large part, you have a huge gender imbalance. When you have a lot of older men who are living by themselves in rural areas, and that just happens to be correlated with gun ownership occurring in those areas. There is a bit of a problem, just generally, I mentioned, in terms of just making purely comparisons across places. So let me give you a simple example. A lot of people will say, look, the UK has very strict gun control laws. Very few guns can be owned, and they have low homicide rates compared to the United States. So it must be the fact that they have strict gun control that's causing the low homicide rates. What I would say is, if you look before they had the gun control laws, they had an even lower homicide rate. So they banned handguns in January '97 in the UK. In the next 8 years, the homicide rate went up 50%. It's still lower than the homicide rate in the United States, but it was higher than it had been otherwise. It went down after that, after they had a 14% increase in the number of police officers. But the point is that there are lots of things that vary across places or countries, and the best way of looking at this is to see what happens to crime rates before and after places change their laws. And I'll give you another simple example, and that is every place in the world that's banned guns, whether it be all guns or all handguns, has seen an increase in murder rates. There hasn't even been one place where it stayed the same. You'd think out of randomness, you'd get some once or twice it would drop, but Americans are familiar with what happened in Washington, D.C., and Chicago, the big increases in violence we had there across the board after the handgun ban. But even in island nations, which you think would be kind of the ideal experiment, because gun control advocates will say, oh, it just wasn't a fair test in Washington or Chicago because people could go and get guns from Maryland or Virginia, or from Illinois, rest of Illinois or Indiana. But even island nations, whether it be the Republic of Ireland or Jamaica or the UK, every time you've seen these types of gun bans, murder rates have gone up. And there's a simple reason for that, and that is when you ban guns, it's the most law-abiding citizens who obey the rules, not the criminals. And that even if you make it somewhat tougher for the criminals to get guns, if you relatively disarm the law-abiding, you make it easier on average for criminals to commit crime. And this applies to all gun control laws. You have to be careful who you're most likely to disarm as a result of the law.
Very important stuff. All right, here's another challenge. I'm taking the challenges so that people can hear your responses. St. Petersburg, Florida. Lee. Hi, Lee. John Lott, Dennis Prager.
Hello, Dennis. I was just listening to your show, and I'm with a group that does a lot of false flag stuff, proving all the parts through metadata and everything. And we have a lot of military-type people that's with our group. We're over 50,000 people strong. And we came down through listening to all these videos that have been out there on the web to singly put the type of weapon that was used in Las Vegas as a M240 Bravo. It's a belt-fed, military-grade weapon. Now, all the weapons that were shown in the 32nd floor of the Mandalay were all 30-shot clips. That doesn't match up. Not with sound, not with rate of speed, not with the number of rounds being
So, all right, so the point that you want to make is that he was not using a military-grade weapon?
She's a conspiracy argument.
Okay. All right, so he was. All right, John?
But look, if you listen to the audio, one thing that's clear is that the rate of fire varies over time. I mean, I must have listened to it I don't know how many times. But and that, I believe, is consistent with one of these bump stock type guns. If it was a regular machine gun, the rate of fire would have been much more constant. You wouldn't have heard the variation in the firing rate that you heard.
Okay. All right, that's fair. And Dave in Denver, hi.
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 Hey, so I just wanted to help clarify the legal difference between the bump stock and something being full auto, and the reason why it's legal is because of the way the law is written.
Right.
With the law being written that a semi-auto has to only fire once per trigger squeeze, per pull of the trigger. And so with a full auto, you can hold that trigger down.
Right, this we established, yes.
Okay, but the legal difference with the bump stock is because the rifle itself is reciprocating inside the stock, that trigger still
Right,
fires.
the question is why it became legal, and we'll be back in a moment. Now. All right, final segment here. John Lott, my guest. His latest book is The War on Guns. I was told that the reason that bump stocks were made legal under the Obama administration was that it enabled disabled gun users to be able to fire with greater efficacy. Are you familiar with that argument at all?
I've heard some people make it. I don't think that's true. I think the last caller was basically on point, and I thought I'd try to make this earlier. That is, the technical difference between machine gun and a semi-automatic is with a semi-automatic.
Wait, no, you don't have to say it again. We've said it 4 times. If people missed it, they could look it up. It's so clear, it's not an issue. So the issue is this. So they're going to probably ban bump stocks. I don't have a problem. You don't have a problem. Rick in Minneapolis has a problem. I don't. If it mimics a machine gun, I don't think people should have it. And that answers it for me. I'm sure there are other arguments, but we don't have the time. So what's going to happen is the Democrats will push for even more controls, but I don't really know what they could do. Dianne Feinstein said yesterday on Meet the Press that
Face the Nation.
Sorry, thank you, Face the Nation, that she couldn't imagine what laws might have been in place that would have stopped the Las Vegas shooter.
Right. No,
So,
look, I mean, I can guess what amendments they're going to put up on this bill. Probably the first one they're going to put up is the so-called universal background check. These are background checks on private transfers. I mean, the bizarre thing was, even before we knew how the person obtained the guns last Monday morning, you had people from former Vice President Joe Biden and others calling for this type of background check system to be put up, all during the Obama administration. Every talk that President Obama gave after one of these attacks, he pushed for these background checks on private transfers. And yet it wouldn't have stopped one of these attacks.
That's right. Well, that's what I ask every time. I don't have an axe to grind here. I want fewer deaths, and I want good people to be allowed to own guns. Those are my only 2 concerns. So I ask every single time there is a mass murder, I ask what law would have prevented it, and then I get crickets.
Right.
Simple as that. John Lott, I got to thank you. It's always great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It is great to talk to him. I mean, he makes sense. Guys, he's a scholar too. Rick, Dave, Don, Lee, Paul, and Michael, I'm sorry I didn't get to your calls. All I want, my agenda here is clarity. I think this helped. By the way, I'll see you folks in Arvada, Colorado on Sunday. Go to Where's Dennis on my website. See you tomorrow.